Thank you for joining us this week on Advanced Archaeology Review Radio. I am Katrina Hutchins, AMI's official head cook and bottle washer, and I will be joined this week as we interview Michael Lee Hill. In addition to Michael, we have Rowan Green in the studio with us today. He is a local individual to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he is interested in some of the things that Michael himself has been experimenting with and experiencing over the course of time. So, Michael, if you would like, I will have you do your own introduction, mainly because I have music, I have UFOs, I have Anunnaki, I have sound and vibration healing, and I don't know when you sleep. So, you may do a better job of describing yourself than I could.
Oh, right on. Yeah, the matters of interest have spread out, like you said, over a lot of different subject matter, but it all began in earnest as a sky watcher. I live very close to Lake Erie, and around 2005 time frame, I started to see these orbs of light out over the lake, and these same orbs of light have now been seen over Phoenix and Texas, worldwide really, but at this time I had no clue. And I started going down and finding some beaches along the water and would hang out around sunset and started to accumulate a library of footage. And some of it started to go viral, and that lended... eventually, the History Channel came to me and said that they were doing a show on Sky Watchers, and that ended up being a full episode. Trying to keep this short. But,
take all the time you like.
Oh, right on. What had happened was they were doing a show on Sky Watchers, and they had interviewed another contactee. His name was Terrell Copeland, and he lived in Washington, 500 miles away, and he had filmed the same orbs of light I had the same story of contact, and the same bed of spiritual information given to him, which is thoughts create reality. You know, your belief, which is your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, create your physical experience. And what was strange, though, is he was a Marine, and they were doing a real thorough medical test on him to send him overseas, and they found out he had an unknown blood anomaly that none of the best doctors, military doctors, could figure out. So what they did was they flew he and I to Boston and had our blood work done by a Harvard professor named David Systrom. And that became the episode Alien Contact on UFO Hunters, Season 1. And I found out from Bill Burns that that's become a episode favorite for fans, and it was the actual episode that got it renewed it got the series renewed for a second season. And the end of that episode, it was revealed by the Harvard doctor that, sure enough, I had the same blood anomaly. And at that point, I had no clue about anything. I was adopted. I didn't know my heritage. I didn't know much anything other than I was experiencing these orbs out over Lake Erie. That episode aired in March of 2008, and the summer of 2008, I went to a festival called Sirius Rising. I didn't even know at that point the Anunnaki were Syrians. I didn't know what an Anunnaki even was. And at that point is when I was approached by these people who told me we'd been known in your past as the Anunnaki, and they proved to me that I wasn't dealing with normal people because they could become faceless right in front of me. And they told me that they wanted to talk to me about this blood anomaly that was revealed on the History Channel and what it truly meant. And they said it was an indicator of their hybrid bloodline on this planet that was known as Nephilim, tomato.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, like I said, I didn't even know what an Anunnaki was. There was no Ancient Aliens on TV. I'd never read a Zecharia Sitchin book or anything, but that was my first encounter with these beings, and so it's been 8 years of a serious crash course given to me by them, and truly what the Nephilim are and where they reside at today, which is kind of absolutely opposite of what most people think. I've seen a lot of people throw the Anunnaki and the Nephilim under the proverbial bus, saying that they're the ones behind the secret societies and the people who have enslaved humanity through, oil and banking cabal.
Gold.
Yeah, that's not actually accurate, because with actual DNA proof now, the true Nephilim became known as what is the mound builders in the North American continent, and are now intertwined into the Native American Indian culture. So I ask a lot of these researchers, if you're saying the Nephilim are these bad guys, what does that have to do with Native American Indians? Because I am Native American Indian, I found out. And we've been, the largest genocide on this planet was committed against the Native American Indians by this cabal. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's a good nutshell where to begin.
Mm-hmm. So the experiences that you're having, now they are ongoing. I follow you on Facebook, so I have the opportunity to see a lot of the images that you're photographing and putting out online. Is there a special thing that that calls you to go outside and skywatch, or is this part of just your daily activity? How do you put yourself in a position to be receptive and available to those types of visitors?
Right on. Good question. It started off, like so many others in this area, sometimes when you're around a natural, beautiful thing like, Lake Erie, but you grow up here, you kind of just, I wasn't even going down there anymore, and it was because of these objects I started, revisiting the lake and going down around sunset. Now I'm just totally addicted. If it's a nice day, more than likely, if I don't have something to do, you will find me down there around sunset, and I've just seen some of the most beautiful sunsets, and I really find a connection with Source in nature more so than anything. But, now I go down there, and, 9 out of 10 times they still show up. It's gotten to the point now that these objects are just flying right over the housetops in this area. Matter of fact, I want to share a story. My mom did not like this subject matter at all. She was of the old school where, she's like, Michael, there's no UFOs in the Bible. I'm thinking, well, actually there are.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with her, though, But I got a call from her a few years ago, and like 3 summers ago, and she's like, I'm never saying anything to you again. I went out in the backyard, and here's this big ball of light right over top of the tree line, the tree in the backyard. And she said I was such in awe that she said she couldn't even move. She was just like stuck, like just staring at it. And then a second one appeared next to it, and that's like snapped her out of it, and she ran to the door and knocked on the door and got my dad outside, and they both sat there and watched it for about 5 minutes. And she said then all of a sudden one of them just disappeared, and then the second one a few minutes later it shot straight up in the air. She said it didn't fly off like left, right. It just went straight up and became this little tiny pinprick of light in the sky, and it flew off. And she said, I'm never saying anything to you again because I know they exist. So that was a nice confirmation. Any night, it's actually grown in 2011. This is an interesting story because they were out over the lake with the activity had grown just crazy, like 10 days in a row. They were out over the lake, and it had got a lot of people to go down to the lake, and it had made it all the way to MSNBC that hundreds of people were going down to the lake now and witnessing this activity. And I'll tell you what happened is simultaneously 2 things happened. One is MUFON came onto the scene, and they said, oh, these are just airplanes coming into Cleveland Hopkins. I'm thinking, I've filmed them going in and out of the lake. That's a pretty weird airplane, you know what I mean?
Right.
And but simultaneously, at that point, MUFON was owned by the largest aerospace company in the world, and they're called Bigelow Aerospace.
We know about Bigelow through Bill Burns' investigations as well.
Oh, right on. What happened was, then you know that they own the Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes, yes.
I got a phone call from one of the Bigelow investigators. His name was Gary Hernandez. And he said, we know that what you're in contact with over Lake Erie is the real deal because it's the exact same thing we know that we've been studying over the Skinwalker Ranch all this time. And by the way, John Alexander, who was the government official who got Bigelow the contracts to, weaponize space stations and, whatnot, he just recently released some information about what they experienced at the Skinwalker Ranch. And they asked them, well, have you come to a conclusion to what the intelligence is behind the phenomenon that you've been studying there? He said, yes, we have. Because of the multidimensional nature of the contact, we know that we're up against the trickster. That's what he said, his own words. And it's Anunnaki, and they've proven to me they can also communicate in that fashion. We can get into this as well, but at the same time period in 2008, I was befriended by the head of the reverse engineering division for Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the NSA remote viewers, and his name was A.R. Borden. And they knew as well that, this was the Anunnaki. And he said, truly, I can tell you the Bigelow investigator, he said, these are not UFOs in the sense that people think of them, like a craft made out of metal and nuts and bolts. He said they have more to do with portals and time travel. And so one thing I want to bring up about this is, over the Skinwalker Ranch, these orbs of light, and while they were called skinwalkers in the first place because the Native American Indians in that area would see these orbs of light come down and turn into a biological life form, like, say, a giant wolf or a giant deer or whatever it wanted to.
Yeah, the shape-shifting aspect.
Yes. But the Bigelow investigator pointed me to some documents that had recently been declassified in the UK Ministry of Defense. And they said the real deal are these orbs of light, but they said exceptionally that 3 of these orbs of light can come together and in some process unknown to mankind can create a giant triangular craft. So I guess the point is that I don't think people truly realize that we're dealing with some type of phenomenon that can become anything biological or technological, from a giant wolf to a giant triangular craft. So that's a whole new ball game,
Now, are those meldings of crafts, are those potentially responsible for what we saw over, like, the Phoenix Lights?
Oh, yeah, I would absolutely agree because, over Phoenix as well, these orbs of light had been shown. And, this isn't even my opinion. This is the UK Ministry of Defense. But I can tell you I've come in contact with a being who's an ambassador for the Arcturian race. And before I knew about the UK Ministry of Defense document, he had asked me if I wanted to know what these orbs of light were. And he had said the same exact thing, that, these orbs of light could come together, and 3 orbs that have... I'll just walk through the process with you.
Please.
He said, I'm sure your listeners will know what a Merkaba is.
You know what? I'm going to ask you to explain it.
Right on. It's, everyone's knows about your aura. It's like your subtle energy fields around your body. Well, certain spiritual masters and whatnot will meditate on that field and get it spinning in a very precise fashion, and it becomes what is known as like an interdimensional travel vehicle. You can, within that ball of light, it's like you're sitting within a miniature sun. And the Arcturian ambassador had told me, he said, once you're sitting in a ball of light, you get a go free anywhere in the universe pass, because you're truly not bound by the laws of the physical universe at that point. And he said everyone's got this field around them, and it ends about 3 feet above your head and about 3 feet below your feet. So if you had a 6-foot individual, they would make a 12-foot ball of light. So So if you ever see a ball of light that's, 11 to 13 feet, you're dealing with one individual more than likely. But he said 3 of these beings can come together and sit in a triangular fashion, and that they had, he said, a basketball-sized ball of material, and he said, Michael, you know how everything truly that's physical matter is light that has slowed down its frequency and became solid. I said, yes, I've heard that. And he said, so imagine a physical material that's screaming to become light. It's the closest physical material that is right on the threshold of becoming light again. He said that this basketball-sized material, one of them, I think it was titanium. I got it written down somewhere. But he said that these 3 individuals sitting in a triangular formation with this basketball-sized ball of material in between them, each being is creating massive amounts of energy because they've created Merkaba fields, and they start transmitting that energy out of their crown chakra into the object, and then he said energy comes in through your feet, your big toes specifically, which is why we shouldn't be wearing rubber shoes. That's a whole other subject. And so imagine infinity loops going between these 3 people that are all creating Merkaba fields. He said they will that smaller object to become a miniature supernova right in the middle of them. Once it becomes a little basketball-sized ball of light, they can extend it into the greater sacred geometry that's being created from the 3 individuals. And he said it's always 3, 6s, and 9s, which is interesting.
Well, Tesla said, if you understand 3, 6, and 9, you understand the universe.
Yes, indeed. So he said once you got 3 individuals that are all creating Merkaba fields and they create a larger ball of light, you get about a 50-foot ball of light. So if you see a house-sized ball of light, there's more than likely 3 people in it. And he said then you get 3 of those balls of light that come together, so you got 9 individuals that are truly in service to the others, that they create this large triangular craft that then thousands of them can get in and come down and see what us crazy humans are up to. So that's how it all played out, but that's exactly what the UK Ministry of Defense had revealed as well. And if your listeners want to check that out, they can go to my website, go to my blog. It's michaelleehill.net. And just check out some of my blogs. I have links to all the UK Ministry of Defense declassified documentation that I was guided to by Bigelow. So yeah, me and Gary Hernandez, the Bigelow investigator, we became friends of sorts and had many conversations, and I learned a lot. And it's really interesting because he's still sending people my way still to this day that, one guy was writing a book on the Skinwalker Ranch, and he met Gary, and Gary told him if he really wanted to know what these orbs of light were, to contact me. I thought it was funny. Bigelow sending people to me. Like, okay, whatever.
Well, speaking of sending people to you, our co-host, Dave Sheldon, we're having some technical difficulties. We're typing to each other on Skype, but he hasn't been able to connect verbally or through the audio with me, so we're still kind of working on that a little bit. But how did you and Dave meet, and what kind of information and experiences did you have while he was there with you? You know
what? That's a good question for him, actually.
It would if I could talk to him.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. I meet so many people, and
I understand.
I don't recall a visit here personally with him.
Okay.
But I also, I've been taken in by the Native American Indian elders and been doing Star Knowledge conferences all over the United States, and with all these elders coming in, which is a whole different story as well. But it could have been that I met him at one of the mound sites with the elders as well. That's very well possible. But
now, on this topic of indigenous people, I am more than happy to turn the show over into that direction if that's where you would like to go. The gentleman we have in the studio with us today, Rowan Green, he actually was up at the No DAPL camp twice this year, last year, I guess now. So there's definitely a string of interest in that subject here as well.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating fascinating subject that is just about to be revealed right now. And Rowan, is there anything in particular you want to get into with this? Or
would like to hear anything about the star beings that comes to mind as prevalent beginner information for the public. To start there, if you could.
Cool. Well, I can tell you, when I found out that because, like I said, I was adopted, so I never knew my heritage until the History Channel show. And it was the Harvard professor who said, if you can get a hold of your... is that him?
I think we may have Dave. Dave?
Right in. Right in. That's funny.
Right in, right on, something.
Hello?
Dave?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Michael, can you hear Dave?
Yes, I can. You sound fantastic, Dave.
Welcome to the show,
Michael. How you been, man?
I'm doing good, man. I was just I was trying to stir up my memory because I am a musician. Where did we meet? Was it a Star Knowledge conference or?
No, we came and met you at your place late last November on our road trip across the country.
Oh, right on, right on. That was yes. Okay,
I knew there'd be a click.
Yeah, yeah, that was fantastic. I've been meaning to get a hold of you because if you recall, while you were filming, some crazy went down. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Nope.
I will watch that.
That's all right. It was accurate.
Do you remember, everything, all of a sudden, everything on the walls, came down, and you're like, wow, I think we got some type of weird activity on film.
Yeah, that was really odd. There was that. There was some light activity. There was all sorts of stuff happening that day. That was quite a meeting, man. We really enjoyed it.
Me too, brother.
Me too. How have you been, by the way? It's been too
real
long.
Real good. I don't want to make it sound negative because if I said be careful what you wish for, but it's all in a good connotation. We originally because of the Serpent Mound, you guys were there for the water and seed ceremony.
Actually, no, we were just kind of cruising across the country, visiting mound sites and interviewing folks like you. We got to talk to Ross Hamilton and Jeffrey Wilson and Katrina, who's doing a wonderful job asking you the questions today.
Oh, thanks.
But it was a great trip, and but that was at that point in time. I think that's what we did focus a lot in on our conversation, was talking about the serpent iconology related to the Anunnaki. And, how Serpent Mound fit in there, and the East Lake site that you introduced us to. And I apologize, I don't know how far along you guys are on this topic in the show, but if that's something you'd like to touch on, it was really interesting to us.
Dave, you were expected to be telekinetically attached to this radio show. You should have already downloaded everything that we've spoken about. Telepathic, thank you.
I'm not that evolved yet. I'm trying.
Well, talk to Michael. He can help.
That's right.
I'll tell you what. Anytime I was laughing at the beginning of the show, that's because I was getting your telepathic jokes, Dave.
He's funny, too. He does that to me all the time.
So much has unfolded with this because, when I found out that, as it turns out, my great-grandfather was pure-blood Iroquois, Seneca. And my biological father has roots into what was known as the Erie Montauk tribe of Indians. So I have two bloodlines running through me of Native American Indians. I had no clue. But the minute I found this out from meeting my biological mother for the first time and my two sisters back in late 2008, my first thought was, man, wouldn't it be fantastic to be able to learn everything that they've learned from contact with star beings, as they call them. And, my next thought was, well, good luck with that. How the heck would you ever meet all the elders of all these different tribes and stuff? How would that even be feasible? And then I was invited to speak at a conference called Angels and Aliens, and Chief Golden Light Eagle, a spiritual leader and chief of the Dakota, which, Standing Rock and that tribe, he invited me to start coming into the Star Knowledge conferences. And it's funny, he just walked up to me and he said, I need the Nephilim ambassadors at the Star Knowledge conference. I need your energy there. Would you come and speak? And I was like, oh, okay. So, long story short, I've become very dear friends with Chief Golden Light Eagle, and sure enough, at these conferences, they're usually 3-day events that have all these elders coming in from all walks of the world, and so I've been fortunate enough to meet them and learn a whole lot from them. But in a nutshell, what I can tell you is that this bloodline that we're speaking of that became the mound builders is truly Atlantean. And they know this, by the way, the Native American Indians. Chief came up to me, he goes, "Oh, you're from the Iroquois, huh? Up around the Great Lakes?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Oh, you're one of those Atlanteans. That's heavy duty." That was his exact words. And here I am thinking like I was on some cutting edge information, and then after that I was like, what, am I the last to know? But he said what is coming out now is Atlantis did not go down in one big earth change. It actually went down in 3. One happened about 50,000 years ago, and then 27,000 years ago was the biblical flood event, pole shift. And then 10,500 years ago, by the way, those first 2 earth changes, the Atlanteans went to the right and actually became what's known as Russia now. And not a lot of people know this, but there's actually a small facet of Russians, about 2%, and they consider themselves to be Ra-shuns, not Russians, Ra, Ra Marduk, Anunnaki. And I am in contact with them right now, by the way, which is very fascinating. We can get into that, but the last group, 10,500 years ago, the elders stayed behind with the sinking ship, so to speak. And at the last breakup, they went up into the bottom of the North American continent, and the first people that they met were the Mayan culture, and they intertwined into there, and it's actually exactly what the Mayans said happened. They said this being Coatzacoalcos showed up and taught them how to build pyramids and taught them the Mayan calendar. And what I can tell you with all this, too, that's really fascinating is it all gets into a subject of cosmic harmonious frequencies, which is 432. And just in a nutshell, why this is important is E equals MC squared. All of our physics of today is based on that, the famous Einstein quote. But quantum physicists now tell us everything is both particle and wave. And E equals MC squared is only the particle part of the equation. It's right there, M equals mass. So E is energy, M is mass, C is the speed of light squared. And what you find out is 432 squared is the speed of light within 1% accuracy. So it is the wave component to the particle part of the equation. What I'm saying is the only frequencies that are truly components of light are 432-based frequencies, because they're the only frequencies that plug right into the C. So 432-based frequencies squared becomes C squared times mass equals energy. It does start leading one into unlimited free energy. What I can tell you is our whole system of timekeeping was given to us back in Sumeria, because a lot of people are aware that right out of the gate, humanity came out of the gate with full functioning culture of, math and legal systems and governance and timekeeping. And your listeners can prove this to themselves. Just take how many seconds are in 12 hours, because we start to realize that the ancients gave us this idea to multiply or divide whole units by 12. It's whether 12 inches in a foot, 12 hours in a day, 12 disciples, 12, 12, 12, 12, just down the line of things that... So look at how many seconds are in 12 hours. It's 43,200. It's 432. So our whole system of timekeeping is based on the 432 cosmic harmonious frequency bed of knowledge, and people don't even realize this yet. Why it's important is when they taught the Mayan calendar, the system of timekeeping was already in place. And what was just given to me not long ago, is maybe about 2 weeks ago, is because that movie 2012 came on. And what I had realized is the ancients, and because what had happened is after they intertwined into the Mayan culture and taught them, they ended up going straight up through the middle of the North American continent, pretty much until they dead-ended at Lake Erie. And my hometown of Eastlake is going to be revealed here this year as the home base of this bloodline. And it's really interesting as well, but they became known as what is now known as the Mound Builders. And what I can tell you is, Pythagoras is the one that discovered say you got your piano tuned now accurately, that your middle A note is tuned to 432 hertz instead of 440. And it does make a big difference anyhow, but we can get into that later. But it's really easy math. If you want to find that lower octave, because there's still lower A notes on a piano, they're called octaves. And to find a lower octave, you just divide by 2. So that lower octave is 216, because 216 and 216 is 432. And then similarly, it's 108 hertz is the 2 octaves below 432 A, and then 54, and then 27. What I started to realize is in these mount sites, they were encoding octaves of 432. Not only did they put it into our timekeeping, but one wall of one of these mount sites will be 2,160 feet long. Another wall will be 1,080 feet long. Well, that's 108 and 216. They're encoding 432 base frequency octaves within the actual layout and dimensions of these mount sites, just waiting for us to catch up. But all those octaves of 432, when you add them up, they all equal 9. 4 plus 3 plus 2, 432, that's 9. 216, 2 plus 1 plus 6 is 9. 108, 1 plus 8 is 9. 54, 9. 27, 9. I'm sitting there watching this movie, 2012, and it occurs to me, the end of the Mayan calendar could not have been 2012 because it resolves to a 5. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. 2016 is the next year that resolves. This year was the end of the Mayan calendar, not 2012, which explains a whole lot with the crazy stuff we've been going through. But it's really interesting with this as well, because even our number system, like if you take 1 times 12, it's 12, and 1 and 2 is 3. And then 2 times 12 is 24, it's a 6. And then 3 times 12, it all resolves to 369, 369, 369, which you said Tesla said once we start to understand the magnificence of the 3, the 6, and the 9, that we would unlock keys of the universe. But what I want to tell you is because of a brand new DNA haplogroup that was just discovered in 1998, it's not that long ago, it's called haplogroup X2A, and your listeners can look into that. What they found is this haplogroup only exists in 3 places in the world, and that the first place is the tall skeletal remains that have been removed from these mound sites, the giants, And what's really interesting, though, is at least 3% of the Native American Indian tribes still have haplogroup X2A, still to this day. I am haplogroup X2A. And which is really interesting because there's no doubt about it, a few generations ago, this bloodline was giants, 9 to 15, 16 feet tall individuals. Now we're not. So something has happened to reduce the stature of the Nephilim in a few generations. Could be why there's abductions even happening. Like the genetic work hasn't ended. But the point of this is, though, you got at least 3% of the Native American Indians have haplogroup X2A. Haplogroup X2A was also the skeletal remains that have been removed out of the mounds. But with any DNA haplogroup type, you can go into the past, and when you find the highest concentration of that blood type or DNA type, then you'll find their last home base, and it happens to be the Hills of Galilee. It is one of the lost tribes of Israel. is really interesting because, in this area is the first Mormon church. I'm not Mormon, by the way, but nothing against it. But what's interesting is they are about to get a huge feather in their cap because in the Book of Mormon, it tells how, who the Native American Indians are, and it is one of the lost tribes of Israel. And how I even started to find this out is because of visiting the mound site that was here, that Dave was telling you about. I found out that some artifacts, there was an actual Willoughby Indian Museum, and they had some of the artifacts from there. So I went there, and I'm talking to this little old lady museum curator, and she's like, what's interesting is the Mormons send people from all over the world to visit this first Mormon temple that was actually built by Joseph Smith here 10 minutes away in Kirtland, Ohio. And she said they also, when they send people to visit that temple, they tell them to visit the Willoughby Indian Museum to see these artifacts of the lost tribe of Israel. So it is the revealing with DNA backing it up. It just isn't someone's opinion that that the bloodline that was here, and this site, by the way, had walls that were 660 feet long, and with like a Cahokia type pyramid in the middle of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a huge settlement right here. So the interesting question is, like, we know that the mound builders were here. They predate the actual Native American Indians by thousands of years. They eventually intertwined and became the chiefs of the Iroquois. And people might not know this, but Cherokee and Iroquois are the exact same DNA. It's just they branched off and went to two different locations. So the DNA still exists within the Cherokee and the Iroquois, but I had a question, because the bloodline is not here anymore. What happened to them? And the answer is they became the Sioux, the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota. And I'm finding all this out because of my being befriended by Chief Golden Light Eagle and being able to meet many of the grandmothers. And I'll tell you what, they are more powerful. Let me give you an example. I was just recently invited to go to a Native American Indian ceremony, which is known as a Sundance. And it was a strange event. Not too many outsiders have ever been allowed in to that ceremony.
No.
But one of the grandmothers at the end of it, she picked me up in her minivan and said, would you go for a ride with me? I said, sure. So I got in her minivan, and she proceeded to tell me how our bloodline in the past was hunted down by the American government, that if they knew you were of this ancient bloodline and, like, you spoke the ancient language or anything, like, you would be taken away and put into prison or worse. And it wasn't that long ago that this was still happening. And she said, I want to give you a history lesson of how the bloodline came up and became known as what's known as the Sioux. She said, it'd be easier, let me show you a map of the United States. And she took her hand and wiped it across the inside of her windshield of her minivan, and honest to God, a map of the United States looked like a red holographic computer printout of the United States showed up on the inside of her windshield. And she looked at me and she said, I know you can see it. And I was like, yep, it's right there. Yep, I sure can. And she proceeded for about 15 minutes to use that map and show me where, like, it almost looked like a candy cane. She said they would never overtax the land. They learned how to live in harmony with their surroundings. And once the tribe got too big, some of them would stay and some of them would move off. And so she showed me the whole migration of the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota tribes and how they became the individual tribes and how they got there. So pretty much that's it in a nutshell of, where this true Nephilim bloodline now resides. And I think Standing Rock was a huge changing of the guard, really, because I can tell you from behind the scenes I truly believe if they would have continued doing what they were doing to those protesters, attacking them with dogs. And,
they are.
I
have friends there. currently. This is me running.
They're still doing it?
Yes. Well, not dogs, but my friends are getting arrested and beaten and pepper sprayed pretty much daily.
Oh, man.
Hooray for love.
Yeah, well.
That is so horrible. It's like, there just needs to be a huge revealing, you know. I keep saying, how about let's just open up the Vatican archives and let the cards fall where they may, you know. Show what's down there.
Nobody's giving up that kind of power.
I don't think they're going to have a choice here much longer. You know, the Anunnaki are returning, and you know, part of what had happened is when I was working with the remote viewers to contact the incoming, by the way, that the whole thing was to use telepathic means to contact the incoming and ask for help. And but the point of all this is I was pulled into a meeting, and they said, we want to talk to you about why your Spike TV show was shut down, because I worked, in 2012, I worked for 9 months of my life and did a whole show for Spike TV, and the last moment it's not been allowed to be aired still to this day. And the point of it was, I could tell you what they said, is it gets to their propulsion systems. He said the reason that we don't allow this information to get out into the public is that the minute people know extraterrestrials are real, the next question is, well, how are they getting from A to B? That leads to the propulsion systems. That leads to unlimited free energy. And they said pretty much that they're scared of the misuse of that technology. I know it creates a huge loophole as well, but, you know, it was an interesting point that, you know, they said it's truly Pandora's box, that once unlimited free energy is released on a planet, if people aren't spiritually ready, there's no containing it. It's unlimited, it's free, and it's energy. So he said, what do you think people in the, you know, other countries that have different mindsets where, you know, they take a woman out in the middle of a village and stone her to death because she's been rumored of having an affair. He said, what do you think that they're going to do with their unlimited free energy? Probably nothing good, you know. But they asked me, we got into they were asking me my own thoughts. They were like doing a think tank, and everyone was giving their thoughts on how first contact should be handled. And there was a lot of concern over religious fundamentalists like freaking out over this. And it occurred to me, I said, why don't you release the reality of this intelligence in our past first? You know, these are the people who built the pyramids. You know, and I can tell you through Carmen Bolter's work, the lady who did the Pyramid Code. Such a great series. I've become friends with Carmen. She is working on a new documentary series because they have new ground-penetrating radar that has uncovered a whole labyrinth complex under what's known as the labyrinth in Egypt. And 60 feet down, this complex spans acres, and some of the rooms are the size of grocery stores, she said. Some of the smaller rooms are the size of Olympic swimming pools, and these rooms are filled with nothing but gold and artifacts. And she said the hallways just that connect one room to the other, if you were just to take those hallways out and put them end to end, you'd have to walk over 1.5 miles of just hallways getting through one room to the other. And that's only at the 60 feet level. She said at 110 feet below the sand is a whole nother complex that mirrors the 60-foot level, yet there's no hallway that goes from, or no shaft, no nothing. There's no connection between the 60-foot level and the 110 feet level. And, you know, they know it's there. They're working on right now a documentary to show what's there. And I'm sure you guys are hip on what's happening in Antarctica right now. So my point is, you know, I think it'll relieve a lot of the fear of the subject matter to know that the creators they were intertwined in Earth's past already. And if they meant us harm, we wouldn't be talking right now. So I think we're on the verge of some really great things, and I don't know if you're aware, but mass media scientists just released that they The reality of Planet X, that was January of 2016. So everything's coming to fruition. I've already met the Anunnaki. I know that they're real, and it's all about to come to a conclusion, a good one, I believe.
Well, we need that for sure. One of the back to the free energy subject just briefly, Michael, if you don't mind. When we were there, one of the really cool things that you shared with us was cymatics. Being into music, it really was cool for us to learn about that from you. And I've come across a lot of research recently in the past year that suggests that, and as you I think alluded to, that these indigenous peoples were given the knowledge to find these locations for the sacred sites. And we've come to understand that a lot of these locations are the sites of electromagnetic anomalies. There's natural energy in the earth there, ley lines, call them what you will, the intersections thereof. Do you think, Michael, and I know that you pay attention to crop circles, do you think those crop circles are the result of kind of an earth-bound cymatics kind of a situation where, instead of the vibration of sound, you've got electromagnetism coming up and creating these designs, or do those come from elsewhere?
You know what? I think you're very intuitive, and that's exactly what I believe, and I can tell you why. I had tracked down every note of the musical scale, all 7 notes before you get to the octave, and I had tracked down the accurate. First of all, they were tuned accurately to a 432 diaspan, which is like, your center point. And I had tracked down all 7 notes and their cymatic equivalents. And I think I probably showed you these crystal disc creations that I created.
Yeah, very cool.
So what I did was I created a 7-disc set of every note, the cymatic image encased in quartz crystal with a copper wrap around it. And because of doing this and working with those discs, I began to be able to look at a crop circle and go, oh, that's a D note. Oh, that's an E note, and I found so many correlations of being able to actually show a cymatic image and then show a crop circle that is identical. So there's no, is no doubt in my mind that frequency is being used somehow in the creation of crop circles. And I can tell you as well, there's 2 crop circles that I think are the 2 important crop circles that have been given to us. One was in Italy in 2010, and it encoded an ASCII binary code, E equals MC squared. Well, as we were just saying, there's a missing frequency component. Well, the next year in the exact same field in Italy came what's now known as the Ia Inki crop circle. People can type that in if they want to look into this. What I can tell you is that crop circle is based off of a 7-pointed star. And at the every end of that 7-pointed star was a row of circles in its ASCII binary code. And when you decode it, it actually encoded Ia space Inki. Well, that 7-pointed star, because of my own research, I know it is created through cymatics with a 27 hertz pulse, which is 4 octaves below 432, creates a perfect 7-pointed star. Because how this works is the lower the frequency, the more simpler the geometry becomes. And so if you want real nice straight lines and a simple star-looking pattern, you go to lower frequencies. 27 hertz creates a perfect 7-pointed star, and it's 432 related, which plugs into the crop circle being E equals MC squared. No one's really figured this out yet, and I've released it on my website, and I think it's really interesting that, to me, the Inky crop circle, by the way, I've been revealing this. It's a little strange for me because, believe me, I'm really okay with just being called Michael. But when I met the Anunnaki, they told me that I was this being in the past known as Ia, and they said the water bearer. That makes no sense to me. You can imagine if I never knew what the Anunnaki was at that point, the name Ia, and they said Inky, that this was a previous incarnation of mine. And So a little further down the line, a couple months, I put out a message to them through meditation and telepathy. I said, listen, if you are who you say you are, put the name Inky into a crop circle. And I'm a student of the subject. I will see it, and that'll be my confirmation that you are who you say you are. My next thought was, what a silly request. Imagine a big crop circle with, like, Inky written in cursive. It's like, what the hell's that going to prove? And then my next thought was, well, you'll figure it out. You know, if you are who you say you are, you'll figure it out. And while you're at it, encode it with something only I'll be able to decode. And I thought, well, that's a tall order. And, you know, it took 2 years, but then that crop circle showed up. And sure enough, they did encode it with something only I would be able to decode, which was the 432 base frequencies being encoded into it through the seven-pointed star. But what I can tell you is really interesting about this is that same seven-pointed star is the world map in Babylon. It's actually in a museum right now, and you can see it is a seven-pointed star. And the Cherokee Nation, one of the homes of the Nephilim, is their emblem for their tribe. The Cherokee is a seven-pointed star.
Do you think there's a Pleiades tie in there?
Oh yeah, Pleiades is Inky's mother's side. It's so through the whole Inky bloodline of the Anunnaki, they're half Pleiadian. And you find out that the Pleiades were named after Inky. So, you know, a lot of people don't understand that there's two totally different bloodlines that run throughout the Anunnaki. And it's because the king of that planet, his name was Anu, he had a female partner who was not Anunnaki. She was a Pleiadian queen. And their firstborn son was named Ea, and he was the first hybrid within the bloodline. Later on, that relationship ended with a Pleiadian female, and he hooked up with an Anunnaki female, and they had another son, which would have been Ea's half-brother, and he was a pureblood, and because of their own succession of kingship within their culture, the throne went to his brother Enlil instead of himself, Ea. So the Pleiadians are absolutely intertwined into the Anunnaki. So, you know, one half is all Syrian, or Anunnaki, if you will, and then the other side is Syrian, Pleiadian hybrids through the Inky side.
That's really interesting, and it does echo oral tradition that speaks to origins from these different planets. And of course we see Sirius, the Pleiades, Orion, you know, consistently revered by all these ancient cultures. That's very interesting.
Indeed, and I can tell you, Chief Golden Light Eagle, you know, he plainly told me that their contact is the Pleiadians for, you know, star being contact. And between us here and all your listeners, I'm actually came in contact with a Pleiadian ambassador that's on the planet right now, and he's very involved with the Wingmakers. The Wingmakers are the Pleiadians, by the way, if anyone is, you know, hip on Wingmakers subject matter. But he has become a dear friend of mine, and he's only 20 years old right now, but he is so freaking brilliant. It's like I got to keep telling him, slow down, dude. It's like I'm running behind you trying to catch up with your intelligence.
But, you know, I think that's part of our, if you want to use the word, that's part of our evolution. You know, things do speed up over time, and I think that, you know, if you think back historically to when trains first came out, people thought going 25 miles an hour was going to rip the flesh from your bones. And, you know, now they're talking about raising speed limits. And, of course, people who are over 40 and 50 are thinking, no, we can't possibly function at that high of a speed. But the people coming past us, behind us, can. They do have the ability to function at that speed. We might not, but they do, or will.
Indeed, indeed. You know, I just say surround yourself with people who are good hangs, and you know, he's definitely, his name's Sheldon Ray Bird, by the way. You guys should interview him. I met him because Chief Golden Light Eagle actually brought him in to start speaking at the Star Knowledge conferences, and his mother is actually a very famous, one of the most famous Native American Indian musicians, because she was featured and was part of Robbie Robertson's band.
Oh, wow.
from the band, and
Yeah.
he is just a wealth of knowledge. Truly is in contact with the Pleiadians. People don't know. A lot of people hear talk of the Blue Avians, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's Pleiadian. It's the exact same group of people.
I have to say, those are not terms that I'm familiar with. Unfortunately, we have less than 5 minutes on our hour, so I'm probably going to have to go out to your blog and do some digging to get some more information, which is great. And I would like to remind everyone that if you are interested in following Michael and his journey, that you may do so through his website, which is his full name, michaelleehill.net. It's important that that's .net.
Yes, indeed.
Michael, if you could tell everyone, I want everyone to hear what you told Rob and I just about your message and about choosing love, the comment that you made. I thought it was wonderful, and I think it applies more than ever.
Yeah, pretty much just choose love relentlessly, regardless of the outside of appearance of things,
Mm-hmm.
And really, I've been coming to a absolute understanding of light and dark. Dark is when you choose to give your power away to some outside source, usually illusionary, and and following someone that tells you to do something that offends your soul, and you do it anyhow. That's the path to darkness.
Ouch,
so the path
yeah.
to light is standing in your own sovereignty and choosing your I am, and not letting anything come in that offends your soul, and stand up, choose love, even if it's not the easy choice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we need to hear it.
Yeah, we need to do it. We need to be it.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. Well, I would like to thank all of you, Michael, for being here and sharing all of this with us. I really hope to have the opportunity to meet you in person, and we would definitely love, because we only touched on 2 of your 97 subjects. So at some point, I would like to have you back on the show to discuss maybe 2 or 3 of those other things. Dave, we had technical problems on this end, so you were a trooper. Thank you so much for coming through and being able to.
I'm sorry it didn't work out. I'm tragically late. That's the story.
We had you in the astral, Dave. So it's
yes,
all
we
good.
did. Yes, we did.
Right on.
And I'd like to thank Rowan for joining us. And the rest of you can't see, but we actually have a studio full of people today. And Michael, this was primarily your fault. They really wanted an opportunity to listen to you and possibly to interact. We didn't get to that point, but you had a large studio audience. in the station today.
Well, hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you back on. I mean, shoot, we were at Michael's for a day and, maybe 6 hours solid, and we didn't want to leave. I mean, we just were scratching the surface there.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us, both in person and on the radio or via the internet, as it may be. You have been listening to Advanced Archaeology Review Radio on WELT 95.7 FM, brought to you from the beautiful downtown library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We are also live streaming at acpl.info/WELT, and you can also find us using your smartphone and the Intune radio app. I would like to remind everyone that we are a community-supported radio station. We love what we do, and we love having you as listeners, and we love having you as supporters. So if there's any way that you can help support the radio station, please feel free to contact us either by phone, mail, or in person. Once again, thanks for joining us. Everyone have a great week, and we will be back next Thursday with an all-new show.
Thank you, Michael.
Peace. Thank you for having me.
There really should be music playing right now. Hey, there it is.
We could just sing.
No, we couldn't.